resignation, great reshuffling. The other day I heard it was a new term. I don't know, it just escaped me, but all these different terms about how there's movement, right? And so organizations are looking at innovative ways to keep their current staff on for a longer period of time. And I feel like I've come across a company that has a very good answer to that, a good solution to that in helping companies continue to grow. We're going to focus on healthcare, but I would imagine these same concepts can help in other industries. And so without further ado, I want to bring on my guest. I'm really excited about today's guest, which is Rafael Castaneda. He's actually the vice president of workforce development at a company called MedCerts. So welcome to the show, Rafael.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Okay. So I'm a recruiter at heart. So I'm all about bringing in new folks. Our company is all about bringing in new folks, but we also want to do two things. One is keep the folks we bring in, but then also have another tool in our or an arrow in our quiver, if so to speak, on how we can attract more new people by saying, look, this is an entry level position, but you've got a career track here. We're going to help train you to do better and do more. So I love that those both parts of the equation here. And that's why I'm really excited about having you on today.
Great. Thank you.
And then guys who are just now signing in, I'm going to pull up my profile here to make sure that we're live. And I think we are. And I want you guys to sign in. Let us know where you're signing in from. What city, what state, what country. Yep, there we go. It's working. I'm seeing ourselves. So we got quite a few already here. Trevor, glad to have you. Isabella, appreciate you. Aaron Gupta, he says, nice to meet you. Just want to let you know that my ebook or paper book, The Preventable Epidemic. Okay, he's talking about his book, which is awesome. I'll look at that later. Thank you very much for that. We have Jessica Ilsley, I believe. Ilsley. Welcome. Appreciate you. She says, beautiful. And Joanne, thank you for being here. All right. So let's go further into this topic. And guys, if you have questions as you're chiming in, let us know what questions you have, as well as where you're coming in from today. So Rafael, tell us a little bit about one of the things that you noticed or your company noticed that was a deficiency in the marketplace. So we want to kind of define the problem or the issue. I've kind of given a little bit of a interim or introduction to it, but I want you to kind of expand that a little bit for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just MedCerts is an organization that was born out of working with American Job Centers. And if you don't know what that is a place where people go to become upskilled or reskilled. They're looking to re-enter the workforce. And so if you fast forward from 2009, when we were established, to 2020, the pandemic exacerbated, I think, a pivot in the landscape. And what I call consumer learners, because I think learners are looking at their educational options with a much keener eye than maybe ever before. And not only are they looking for an affordability component, but they're also looking for a what else can you do for me component. And that's where MedCerts has really seen some great traction. So we are working with thousands of students across the country, hundreds of employers. And specifically in the healthcare and IT field, which is where our certification programs lay, is how can we make sure that learners can get a great quality education without going into debt, and ultimately be able to point them towards either our network of employer partners or employers in general, where a certified frontline worker can go get a job at a spot, hopefully in their neighborhood or in their city, be able to work in an industry like healthcare, which is growing dramatically, 20% in the next 10 years or so, as the workforce development data tells us. And then also at the same time is how do they take that education and grow with that employer, right? So getting the job is great, but how can they grow with it? To your point earlier, I think we've established a pretty cool pathway with some interesting features that, maybe 10 years ago would probably not even have been possible, because it incorporates employers, academic institutions, workforce funding, and organizations and training providers like MedCerts. So pretty excited about like this, I don't know, ecosystem or, pathway that we've developed, and we're seeing a tremendous level of success with it. So eager to talk to you more about it.
Awesome. So the overriding theme I'm getting from this, which I appreciate, is how do we take and have almost like a career path for these new folks that are coming into the organization? It may be an entry-level position like in healthcare, maybe it's a patient access representative, or perhaps on the medical side, it's a medical assistant, certified medical assistant. Some of those entry-level positions, they want to bring them into the organization, help them see a path where they can grow within the organization. Because one of the things I've gotten feedback from, in fact, I did a speaking engagement with Forbes last week, and one of them said, who answered back, said, look, we're training these folks and they're leaving. And so my answer to that was, as soon as they feel like the training is over, that the learning is over, they're gonna look at other options. That's just how it is right now. So how is it that, I want to ask this question to you, how is it that you are helping the employee to see through your program that this is a long-term process? This is an area where this company is going to help me to continue to grow.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's some of the value that I think these learner consumers are really taking a look at and saying, what is in it for me long term? And so let me kind of paint the learner journey, if you will, and then we can dive down to wherever we may go. But a student coming out of high school, or somebody that is looking to change careers, or maybe they were part of the Great Resignation that we've heard about recently, or maybe they were one of the 40 million people that became unemployed when the pandemic started and shortly thereafter. They're taking a look now and saying, gosh, how do I avoid that moving forward? And I think the same questions have always been asked, but this is really an exacerbated situation where I think this really came to the forefront. So in healthcare, not only is the industry growing, but employers are having a very, very difficult time finding that frontline staff. And to your point, like somebody coming in, getting trained, and then seeing, gosh, what else is out there for me? I'm seeing sign-on bonuses in the thousands of dollars range just to take a role. And so, what MedCerts has done historically is we work with healthcare systems where we recruit students every day into our training programs. And obviously, if you're going to enter into a healthcare IT training field, you're most likely interested in this as a job, I would hope. So, what we've done is we've actually incorporated the potential role on the back end of the training in our recruitment efficacies and activities, and actually highlighted the fact that the employer, if the student passes all of these selection criteria, may actually sponsor their training. So imagine for a moment, if you're interested in healthcare and you want to become a medical assistant, and you're looking at all of these options. JFF published some work the other day, which I think is really great, about how there's like a million different certifications available to students in the marketplace today. How do you decide? Well, imagine for a moment, if you're a learner and you're looking, and you see a posting on something that's like, there's an employer in your area that may have a job available for you if you go through this training and get certified. So your intentionality, your interest levels probably peaked, because most recruitment for this type of program is simply just the training itself, not the outcome on the backside. So this is really important. So as the student goes through the training, what we have found is that they actually have the ability to do better academically, because they know there's this incentive for me on the back end if I do everything that I'm supposed to do. And the employer is paying for my training. So obviously I don't want to have to pay that back. So from an academic perspective, you have a much more engaged learner. As they transition from learner to employee, they go through the certification process, absolutely critical. And then they go through the interview process, which MedCerts helps them with the employer. And the employer then at that point says, you either made it or you didn't. No guarantees, right? In life, they still have to do a great job through that interview process. But if they make it through that, some of our employer partners are actually giving these students up to a 24-month employment contract. So imagine for a moment, you're a learner looking for an opportunity, something you're already interested in. On the employer's perspective, they're saying, we need these frontline positions filled. We're already potentially paying thousands of dollars for sign-on bonuses. Why don't we take that money, pivot it towards sponsorship of training with students coming through this pathway? We get to kick the tires, if you will, with the student along the way. And at the end, if they do a great job in that interview, they're coming in to fill these frontline roles, and they're going to be with us for up to 24 months after they start that job. That's where I think we also have additional opportunities to add value for the employer, to ultimately get back to your initial question, which is what comes next? Because I'm a frontline employee, maybe you have me for 24 months. Okay, great. Well, then what happens then? So what MedCerts has done is partner with academic institutions where students can actually take select programs and transfer them for articulated credit into colleges like Excelsior College in New York or Franklin University in Columbus, Ohio, and continue their education into an associate's, bachelor's, and beyond. And if their employer has a tuition assistance policy, they can help them offset or even pay for the cost of that program in many ways. So
I love
that
it.
person now becomes, instead of a frontline,
Yeah.
they're now your next manager, your next department head, your
Yeah.
next leader, and they're growing with the organization long term.
So I've got some lots of comments coming in, guys. Thank you so much for all the comments. I'm just going to address as many as I can, actually. We have Aaron Barnes. Aaron, good to see you. He's coming in from Arlington, Virginia. We have Lisa Labe. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. I hopefully I am. From Maine. Thank you for being here. Denise Frank from Chicago. Esther Landon from Long Beach, California. Awesome. Appreciate you being here. Erica Cooey joining from Kingston, Ontario, Canada. And Benjamin McCool, one of our frequent viewers. Glad you're here today. He's coming in from Joplin, Missouri. We have Leah, of course, coming in, all saying hello. Farah, good to see you as well, Farah. Esther has a question. She says, how does MedCerts work with employers to hire individuals who have been justice involved? Interesting question.
It's a great question. And, if you think about the way that MedCerts began working with, for the most part, an underrepresented population of students, people who were thinking, I need to be retrained, but you know what I'm not going to do? I'm probably not going to go down to the local college or university and spend tens of thousands of dollars on a degree. So their options were very limited at that time, right? So that's really something that we have looked at, pretty closely. And a couple of things that I can tell you where we may be different from other trainers is that our price points are, for the most part, going to be $4,000 or less. Now, we do have some more advanced programs that are at the $6,000 range, but there's only a few of those. We want to make sure that any student that's utilizing any sort of workforce funding or something along those lines would be able to afford this without going out of pocket if they were eligible. So to get to Esther's question, for students that have been justice involved, some of the programs are going to require a background check. And so we can help facilitate that. We also want to make sure that students are aware of that up front before they put any sort of investment in place, right? So as a very specific example, say like a pharmacy technician, background check is going to be critical because you're working with pharmaceuticals, and all employers are going to require something like this. So being able to help educate the student on what the requirement of the program is may do a couple things. Number one, it may lead the student to say, thank you for telling me that. I need to pick a different option. Right? That's number one. Mm-hmm. Number two is, thank you for telling me that. I don't care. I'm going to continue on with this, but at least I'm informed. And number three is, how can we make sure that the student has that information up front as they're looking at different programs, possibly even something that's adjacent or something that's relevant to their interest level. So I think it's about making sure that people are aware up front. Obviously, nothing we can do about changing the past or what the regulatory requirements are for certain programs. But that's why our wide catalog, I think, really gives us the opportunity to service those students who may have had these interventions and point them or direct them in the right way to help them make a more informed decision. I do believe, though, that as we look at the justice-involved demographic of students, I believe that what we're seeing in the regulatory landscape is potentially almost like an apprenticeship model, where there will be certain employers that are willing to work with individuals that may have had justice-involved situations in their history. That is fantastic, because our apprenticeship model will then allow that person to be able to pursue this education and potentially get a great job. Now, I would recommend all employers look at something like this, because I think it's incumbent upon us to be able to do this for our entire population. But for those that lead the way, certainly MedCerts would love to partner with those organizations, because we do have Department of Labor approved apprenticeship models that we theoretically could transition to work with those employers who are open to having folks who've been justice involved in their history, and really giving them an opportunity to move into a great career long-term. And then all of the other benefits that we described about earlier, about taking it to a college degree, staying with the organization long-term, all of those things would still be in play, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it makes a lot of sense. And I'm thinking of this as, and of course, she's, I think, bringing out a great point. Oh, sorry, Esther, bring a great point, because as you mentioned, there are certain demographics that are more socioeconomically affected by this than others, right? So it will give an opportunity to have folks come in at the entry level, even more diverse than that perhaps than they're doing now. But another thing I'm thinking about is, the actual employer could use this. And this is one of the first things I thought of, is they could use this as a retention tool, because when they, let's say they have someone who's been working there for, let's say as a patient access rep for a while, that's had an interest perhaps getting on the medical side and becoming a medical assistant or a pharmacy tech or wherever the case is. This, if they have this program, they have a pathway for that person to get on through that. And I can't tell you how many people I've interviewed that have started out as somewhere like a legal, not a legal, unit secretary, department secretary, and moved all the way up to where now they're a lead in a department as a nurse. And I've even met some that started out at that same level that made it all the way to CNO of the hospital. So I think it'd be wonderful if an employer has these frontline employees that they know, they've seen their work record, they know they show up to work, they know they're doing a great job at their organization. It's someone they want to keep long term. They could perhaps take some of those folks and run them through that program to where on the other side they've got another career opportunity. And it, more likely that employee who may just leave after a couple of years may end up making a career out of it, like some of the people I've met. What are your thoughts on that, Raphael?
Well, I think you're spot on. We have a partner down in Louisiana who told us that this staffing kind of crisis in the healthcare field is their number one priority. And if you've been around healthcare like you have for many, many years, like you generally don't hear that. You hear other things like, new programs, new locations, new hospitals, new services. Not many times do you hear we need this frontline staffing issue solved. And so I think you're absolutely right. And that partner down in Louisiana told us not only is this their number one priority, but they took the opportunity and the impetus to actually go to their incumbent employees directly inside their hospital system and say, cashiers and retail workers who would like to join a cohort of folks who are going to be trained to become pharmacy techs. So they looked internally as well. And it wasn't just the evergreen, pipeline of talent acquisition constantly coming through the door, but I would strongly recommend that people also do what you just said and look internally and say, do we have folks here that already know our systems? They already got the key card, if you will, and they want to do something and make this a career. Well, you can do a great service for those folks by putting them into a cohort and a med search type training to be able to help them get to that next level in their education. And then again, everything downstream stays the same. They can still go to a college or university and transfer those credits potentially. And then obviously tuition reimbursement or tuition assistance on the employer side can help offset that cost. It really is a learner-centric model. And if you can get your incumbent employees who might want a career change and then move into something more complex, great way to retain those folks and grow them into your next technician of fill in the blank. So I think you're spot on there.
Absolutely. And you got a lot of great comments coming in and questions. So I'm going to address some of those. For instance, Benjamin, he says, it sounds like a great way to get folks into healthcare in specific roles who are limited in their ability to expand their education. Does your organization offer anything that can help someone who, for example, has an MBA in healthcare administration get into the healthcare industry? Have you seen any success there? In fact, if you can, when you answer this, give us an idea of your catalog of types of certifications that are available. I know a couple of them, but I probably don't know all of them.
Yeah, it's a great question. And so I think Benjamin asked it. So thank you for that, Benjamin. I think it's a great question. We are very acutely aware of the different stratification inside of the healthcare industry. Primarily, our focus is frontline. So, your pharmacy technician, your medical assistant, your patient care tech, your phlebotomy technician, your medical coder and biller. These are folks that are needed in every single hospital system anywhere in the country. And so we primarily focus a vast majority of our catalog, I would say 75% of it at this point, on very, very specific healthcare oriented programs. Now, why we think those programs are great, I can outline in greater detail in terms of like the content for hours and hours on end, but I'll spare everybody and just say it's immersive technology. This is not a discussion board and a paper that you're turning in. You are gamified. You are doing immersive activities. We really want you to master theory so that when you get into that role after certification, you take your test and you get certified, that you can apply that theory in the most effective and impactful way possible. So our program team, led by our chief product officer, has done a great job there. But I think that, kind of revisiting the question in in totality is about 25% of the catalog is focused on IT. Because I've never been into a hospital or healthcare system that didn't have a need for information technology. And so we're going to focus on things like, network security plus, a lot of the CompTIA and Cisco types of programs. Those certifications are critical. Safety and data security, absolutely essential in this day and age. So I think to answer the question, we don't have anything on like the healthcare clinical side. We do have some more robust programs that we've just launched as of April 1st, like surgical technician and sterile processing technician combined together. Because if you know, in the hospital system, those two departments generally work pretty closely. If you can have somebody that can do both, that just makes that person all that much more valuable. But in terms of somebody moving from like an MBA into the healthcare field, we wouldn't have anything at like, say, a nursing level. But we do have those IT programs where maybe you want to examine something like in the information security system. That might be a very interesting way to do that. Long term, it might be interesting to look at something where, say, somebody coming from a bachelor's or master's program as a bridge program into something larger could be a real option, but it's not something that we're currently exploring at the moment.
Yeah, well, when I hear, and because he has a bachelor's, in the example of the question, a master's in healthcare administration, MBA in healthcare administration, which there's quite a few who are on the track of eventually becoming a CEO or a C-suite executive in a hospital. That's the track they're going down. They want to take those kind of degrees, and I get that. I'm just wondering though, if someone had an MBA in a healthcare administration, if they would be more attractive to a potential employer if they actually had opportunities to be in one of these programs. Because let's say if it's a director level for pharmacy, running the pharmacy discipline within the hospital system in some shape or fashion, I'm wondering if it would help to actually have been on the front lines doing the work as a pharmacy technician. I don't know the answer to that question. I've never asked an executive what they thought of that. And then to your point about IT, being able to come up with some positions in IT that could benefit from someone who has the IT background as well as the MBA in healthcare administration. I would think that there's probably some director level positions that would probably benefit from having the IT background and having the MBA background. I don't know if you see anything like that on your side, Raphael.
I think those are real conversations that need to be explored. We have not gotten to that point yet. And I like your thought of, having walked a mile in somebody's shoes, will that help you be a better leader? I would say that probably is true in any industry, not just healthcare. And while you were saying that, I remember speaking to that pharmacy department lead, and many of them were pharmacy technicians, or the nurse had originally, the CNO had originally started off as like an MA, or something like that. So I think that's very relevant. Mastering those skills and competencies is something we want somebody to do. I could say it would only make you stronger as a leader if you had those. And using my own personal example, I went to graduate school and got a master's in education, and then went and got a green belt in Lean Six Sigma afterwards, which is a professional certification. So my own experience is one that would indicate that's probably a good idea, because all that certification did for me is make me a better professional in a lot of different ways, not just the information that I got and the skills that I learned in the certification, but just understanding what the people who I work with do every day. I don't see how that could hurt.
Makes sense. Esther has another question. She says, are there any employers you currently work with who are open to either apprenticeship model or direct hire of justice involved individuals?
That's a conversation that, I would defer back to the employer. Many of our partners are really looking for like a large scale, sometimes nationwide, certainly regional talent acquisition approach. I believe that if we ever had the opportunity to supply that, as we work with workforce agencies in particular, I think that becomes a real conversation. None of our employer partners at the moment have shared with us that that's a strategic initiative, but I would not be surprised if we see more and more of that as time goes by. But for the most part, it's really about upskilling their incumbent employees, so people already work there, actually pulling from MedCert's current population of students who are finishing their programs and are geographically proxemic to one of their locations. And then tertiarily, building a pipeline of talent acquisition that's evergreen. So you can solve today's problem of frontline crisis and having those roles be open, but what do you do long term? That's where that talent acquisition piece comes in. And I think that, to answer Esther's question, I think that we're going to see more and more of these become strategic initiatives for employers across a variety of different industries, not just in healthcare.
Yeah, and I'll add to this conversation in the sense that when recruiting, if whatever organization we're recruiting for, or think about your organization, if you're watching this, if you have a list of people that you've been able to take from entry level, help them get an education, to expand, to get more certifications, and now they have higher positions, that shows career advancement. That's something you can sell from a recruiting aspect, right? So you're actually offering someone more than just a lateral move. You give them an opportunity to either break into the field or perhaps take whatever position that they're at currently and say, you know what, I can see myself, a few years from now becoming a nurse or becoming a manager, or whatever the case is in an organization, because I've got a company that's going to invest in me as an employee and help me to grow in my career. That's what people are looking for these days. I've heard that more and more often. And the minute that they feel like the career advancement stops is when they start looking at other options. And so I think this is a great retention model as well as a recruiting model, because now I've got something to say, look at Susie, look at Joe, look at Jim, look at all these situations. And we've got videos showing that, okay, these folks grew in their career. That's what I like about it. Okay, looking at some of the comments we have, and actually Esther, she came back. First of all, Farah says, yes, transition programs are great. And then Esther says, Ross, that's exactly what we're trying to do in Los Angeles County. I was just there, by the way, Esther. I was in Los Angeles last week. So start at entry level, but move up the career ladder in healthcare. We're looking for employers in Los Angeles County who are willing to do just that. So I think that's great. The more we can do that, the more we can create better retention. And Aaron, someone who we both know, Raphael, he says, awesome show and guest, Rollis. MedCerts sounds like it has a powerful solution for VPs of HR and talent acquisition. I agree with that, to fill multiple jobs across many functions. What are some specific healthcare job titles MedCerts could help a company fill positions in right away? So give me some examples of the catalog. We talked about medical assistants. We talked about pharmacy techs. What are some other positions? And that way, when folks are watching, their minds could be turning as to what areas have we had a lot of turnover in or had trouble keeping the proper amount of folks in.
Yeah. So what we're finding most often, our two largest programs by volume are medical assistants and phlebotomy technicians. So both by enrollment volume in the program, but then also for those that employers come to us looking for, those are really the top two. We're operationalizing a pilot with a nationwide, actually worldwide organization here shortly. We're going to focus in on Florida as a pilot, but when we talked to them, they had over 1,000 open phlebotomy tech jobs. I mean, how as a recruiter, I'm not a recruiter, but like, how as a recruiter, as an organization, like, do you tackle something like that? Right? Like, to do it one at a time, I would imagine is like moving a beach one grain of sand at a time. Like, that seems like an overwhelming, almost like morale killing situation, because it feels like you just can't get it done. Well, when you can partner with a MedCerts who has, 3,000, 4,000 students currently working towards phlebotomy certification, it kind of changes the nature of what we can do at that point. But we do have some more specific types of programs. We talked about like pharmacy, phlebotomy, dental assisting, medical assisting is another one, medical front office assistant. Some people really like the medical field, but maybe they don't want to work with like the fluids in the blood and that kind of thing. That's me. Right. I probably wouldn't want to do that, but we have other opportunities where you can look at behavior technician and medical office, behavior technician specialist as an example, medical billing, I think I mentioned, medication care coordinator, electronic health records, professional coder, medical front office, and healthcare records keeper. So think about anything frontline that helps a hospital system run or a healthcare entity run. These are the programs and certifications that we really zero in on. And every one of our programs is going to have a certification associated with it, because it makes that person not only valuable as an employee, but it gives them skills that they will always have, competencies that they will always have. And they go and they pass a certification exam that we don't administer this. This is a credentialing authority. So if you want to find the full catalog, about 40-ish programs or so, medcerts.com, probably best way to go. But really, we focus in on that frontline worker who wants to be certified, is going to be valuable to any organization. But when their employer actually brings them in and invests in them, we've seen them, definitely making sure that it stays long-term.
So those who are watching, and those, by the way, those who asked great questions, thank you, Esther and Benjamin. Let us know if we've answered your questions too as we go along. I want to make sure we address them. Of course, if we haven't, we'll go back into it. One of the things I was thinking about too, in terms of campaigning, I'm always thinking of recruitment campaigns. I think of two angles. If a company has 1,000 phlebotomy positions, to give an example, I think is what you said earlier, I would want to have a campaign internal and external, because I may have quite a few employees that are working in another part of the hospital system. Maybe they're doing something administrative and they would like to get over to the clinical side, giving them an opportunity to make that move. And it might be much easier for me to fill the position they're in than the one I'm trying to move them to, especially if there's a huge, disparity in the amount of applicants and available applicants. Because essentially what you have to do if you're looking for somebody with experience is basically a lateral move for them. So if I'm going to go to, let's say, another phlebotomist, and I'm going to say, hey, here's another phlebotomist position, the next thing I've got to offer them is something better than what they have, because it's a lateral move. So it's got to be better pay. Maybe it's some better benefits, whatever the case is. How do you do that? It becomes more and more difficult when everyone is vying for the same candidates. You're not going to be able to just go to the money equation every time. So I think this is where I think it would be pretty useful if a company was innovative enough to say, you know what, let's get this program together. We're going to ask all of our managers who are some of their best administrative employees that we have, they want to keep long-term, giving them an opportunity to have a guaranteed job. If they complete this program and they pass and they get credentialed, they have a guaranteed job as whatever that job they're trying to fill. That's one side of it. The other side I'm thinking of, why not create a recruitment campaign where they don't even need experience, right? You just need to be able to pass the program, and we'll pay them through the program. I remember when I used to be in financial services, they took a chance on me and hired me without me having my Series 7 license. Now, if I didn't pass it, obviously they would have let me go. But during that first few months, they went ahead and paid my salary and everything. So I don't know if companies are even thinking about that. Instead of doing the sign-on bonus, maybe you just convert it into, you actually work for us, take the certification, we'll pay you through your training, and then when you're done, you're guaranteed a job, basically. And what are your thoughts on that? Either we'll do those two ideas.
I think they're exactly what's happening in the landscape today. So, organizations like Guild Education have kind of pioneered, InStride would be another one, have pioneered education as a benefit. And, seeing employees say, again, back to my initial comments, is like, we're not just looking for a place where you're doing us a favor to give us a job. It's almost like things have pivoted 180 degrees. And now employees, learner consumers, as I call them again, they're saying, tell me why I should be here, and that's what we're seeing. And as I mentioned, I think that this was coming several years in arrears. I don't think that this is only a characteristic or a symptom of the pandemic. I think the pandemic just exacerbated it. And that's really where things were laid bare. And employees said, okay, you got to prove to me that this is a good opportunity. And what are you investing in, employer, that shows us that this is actually something that's real? It's not just something you put on LinkedIn and then you forget about it. It's like, this is actually a real investment in employees. And we're seeing more and more large hospital systems and others, retailers, et cetera, getting into the education as benefit conversation. And, there's a conference going on right now here in San Diego by where I live called ASU GSV. People may have heard of it. It's pretty big in the ed tech space. And many of the themes that I'm seeing on plenary sessions or actual sessions that are being given are on the education as benefit conversation. So you're absolutely right. I think that if you have a solution as an employer, not just tuition assistance, not just tuition reimbursement, and just putting some general, as long as it's a program or a school recognized by the Department of Education, that's just I think in many cases employees see that as somewhat lazy, because it doesn't just take into consideration the opportunity, but it needs to take into the considerations, like, what do we do here internally that is going to help me grow in my career? So it has to be much more specific. It's not like, hey learner, hey employee, go choose whatever you want and we'll give you $52.50 a year. It needs to be something like, this is what we do. We're a healthcare system. We're investing in frontline certification so that our frontline employees will grow and be able to have a skill that they can have, again, forever. These are skills and competencies. If you know how to intubate somebody, you know how to intubate somebody. That is a skill. That's something that's very, very valuable in the healthcare field. In terms of the recruitment pathway, with people with no experience, I love that you brought that up. We were talking with an employer in Florida, South Florida, this morning, and her name is Diana. She said, we get a lot of calls. Our recruiters get a lot of calls from people all the time about these jobs. Here's the problem. They're not certified in behavioral technician, which is what we were talking about. Would love to have them, great people, just not certified. So I think your thought on, hey, maybe resources could be pivoted to really show incumbent employees that we're serious about upskilling you and making these things available to you that are affordable. They can be completed in a matter of months, not in a matter of years. And they can actually lead to promotions. They can lead to pay increases, like today, not tomorrow or next decade, but right away, assuming successful certification. And then also at the same point, not just for the people that you have internally, but for anybody else that's coming in, because attrition is going to happen no matter what. It's going to, no matter what you do as an employer. But I think if you have these intentional, very kind of state-of-the-art strategies, if you will, I think that what you're going to find is not only will your internal employee satisfaction and grow, but anybody that you bring into your ecosystem will also remain high because you've invested in them and you trained them. And that, isn't that kind of what the apprenticeship model is?
Yeah, absolutely.
When people were silversmiths, they had to train under somebody that was a silversmith because they had to learn those skills. We're kind of going back to those roots, which I think is great because it's actual skills. Yeah. And I don't think degrees will ever go away. I think degrees are very important. They're critical. It takes people to the next level of their evolution as a professional and as an employee, but maybe not for every student right away. Yeah. Maybe we have other options that fit for them before they go tackle, the bachelor's degree or the master's degree. So I think you're spot on with those two things. And I think that for employers that are doing that now, they're going to reap the benefits of that long term.
Okay, so I have a couple of follow-up questions and just a comment as you're speaking, it gave me another comment I just want to touch on with the diversity aspect. To ask a diverse candidate that may not have maybe in a socioeconomic status to not be able to afford to go get that schooling ahead of time, and to ask that person to go to school, and they might not even like it. I'm just curious, what if there's a situation where someone starts out in the medical assistant track, but really it's not for them? They really pharmacy is probably more what they would like. Or if they start out phlebotomy wise, have you had flexibility, or do you have situations where the learner has learned enough to figure out that that's not what they want to do and they want to switch over? How does that part work, or does it work?
It's a good question. And if it was just the certification exam prep on its own, if you think about the differences between dental and pharmacy, like those are vastly different disciplines. Right. So, the subject matter content would need to be started from the beginning. Like with pharmacy, you need to learn what is a pharmaceutical? How are they compounded? What is the math behind something like that? And you grow into that. Same thing with dentistry. Talk to me about bicuspids and molars and all that kind of stuff is very specific to that discipline. As you can tell, I'm an expert in neither of those disciplines.
Me neither.
Just knowing enough about the subject matter content. But what I really love about MedCerts, and one of the questions that I asked when I joined was talk to me about the programs. So we define a program as almost like a micro credential. So a program is several courses incorporated into that. And some of the courses, the very first course that anybody's going to take is professionalism and allied health. Why that's important is because, to your point, Students come from a variety of different backgrounds and demographics, and that is great. We love that. We want to encourage more of that. But there's this way that healthcare industries function: safety, patient care, bedside manner, right? Like the kind of stuff that's somewhat like table stakes. We start students with those types of courses. So if a student comes in and is like, hey, I'm getting in more into my dental work, and I'm kind of like, I don't know. As I'm in that professionalism course, that might be the time to make a change.
Yes.
Because you're not in the content, deep subject matter expertise at that moment, where you'd have to go and relearn everything again. So yeah, there is some level of flexibility, especially if the student's early on in the program. But once they get into that subject matter expertise, that content area, that's when it becomes a little bit more difficult. It'd be like moving from math to English, two very, very different disciplines. But if you do it early enough on, great. The good news is with these programs, you're going to know quickly. That's number one.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
Number two, it's not going to be 2 years down the road before you're like, I'm a junior. Oh gosh, I don't want to do this. What do I do? And then have to do a completely different, pathway plan. You can find out quickly. You can make that move, and you can do something different. Okay. I think one of the benefits, though, is making sure that we do the good discovery with the student prior to enrollment. But certainly, flexibility is going to be part of any conversation here.
And then my other follow-up question was, how involved do the healthcare systems get in being part of the training? Because let's say it's a pretty large system and we got a certain way that we like to do things, and we love to have some of our people maybe come to a course or two and be part of the teaching process. I don't know, is that even possible? Have you guys done anything like that?
Yeah, so we have one example of that. I mean, for the most part, we're teaching to the certification exam. So that content is really designed for the exam prep and the exam.
Okay.
It really is designed for that. We also incorporate that, the professionalism, the med term, the anatomy and physiology. We want to wrap those kind of around that subject matter. We did have a relationship, or we do have a relationship with an organization that really wanted to look at like CNAs, because the nursing program or the nursing industry, and while we don't do anything yet in the nursing industry, it's almost in a worse case situation than frontline employees in terms of finding nurses. Yeah. I saw a post the other day for a $20,000 sign-on for a nurse. I mean, I maybe that's normal to you, Ross, but for me, like, I was like, wow, that's incredible. Haven't seen anything like that. I've seen 3, 4, 5, 20 though. Haven't seen that.
I've seen 40.
Have you really? Wow. Okay.
40, yeah. So okay. I wouldn't say it's common. The more common that we've done some analytics on that. We analyzed about I want to say it was about 12,000 postings from about March 2020 till about August 2021. The average in the United States was just under $10,000, but the most popular price point was 10,000. Even though I think the average is like 8,900 or something like that, because you have so many who offer less, like you mentioned, 4,000, 5,000. But then the number has grown. But the most I've ever seen is 40,000. Guys in the comments, let me know if you've seen one higher than that. That's the highest one we've seen. It was a CV. I think it was a CV ICU nurse, which is very, they don't grow on trees.
Right.
They only have to have experience as a nurse, but they have experience in ICU. And not only that, you have to experience in ICU in the cardiovascular unit. So it was very specialized, if you will. But yeah, they're out there. Which shows you how much of a need there is if an organization is willing to pay that kind of money on top of a competitive salary. It really speaks to the needs out there. Absolutely.
Yeah. It was exciting. Sorry, just to like finish the thought. Like it was interesting to see that, because the hospital system that we were working with wanted to feed more people into their nursing program. So they built, in partnership with us, what we called a pre-nursing program. So it wasn't a CNA, because each state has its own rules associated with CNA and nursing in general. So we just cobbled together a patient care tech program, which we currently have that students can take on their own, along with a few other items and other courses. Mm-hmm. And that was to help feed those people that were coming from an MA or a patient care tech background into a pre-nursing that then, once they got into the hospital system, could explore as an employee, going to nursing school and getting their CNA or doing something along those lines. So customized content is definitely something that is possible. And we have had experience with that. But candidly, we really haven't had to, because the frontline programs are so high in demand that people just really want what it is as the person moves towards that certification. That certified talent, that's really the thing that employers are going after today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just really suggest organizations are thinking about this. If you really want to play it safe, go ahead and cherry pick some of your best employees that are just admin employees that have put their hand up in some way to say, yeah, I would be interested in some clinical positions. Give them that opportunity and just go ahead and just pay for that as part of just them being an employee. And it will, I'm telling you, it will engender more loyalty to your program, to your organization. It will definitely do that. And the secondary benefit is now you can video that person, interview them, ask them about how it was to go through that program and how they're so jazzed about being a part of this organization because they invest in their education. Guess what? We use that for a recruitment video, which is what we do 7 days a week and twice on Sunday. Okay. We take a lot of those stories and we put them into video, which speaks powerfully to recruiting. And that way you're not just presenting a lateral move. This is really an organization that's going to invest in you as a person. Anything you want to add before we kind of wrap up this hour? If I'm an organization, sitting in an organization, let's say I'm a department manager that's running a department that has, 20, 30 open phlebotomy or med cert, opportunities open. And I'm like, ugh, how do I present something like this to management? How is it I can kind of get this approved? What are some steps I should take? By the way, before you answer this, we have Mr. Vedafar from Iran. Thank you for being here. And we have Danielle coming from Italy. So thank you. Wow, we got some international folks here. Thank you very much. So go ahead and answer that question for me, please.
Let us help you. That would be the best thing I could say is let us help you. There's 3 basic things that we help our partners with in our discovery conversations with them. The number one place to go to learn about this, things that I'm going to reference, like a case study, a downloadable case study that is done in partnership with one of our healthcare systems. They just happen to be the 7th largest healthcare system in the country. Multiple locations, multiple programs. Without fail, every time we've had a partner come in and say, this one location, this one program. Before too long, it's now multiple locations, multiple programs that we're helping them recruit for, and it's multiple incumbent employees that we're helping them upskill. And then many of them also put their open positions on our career center on medcerts.com and are just regular students who are coming through the pipeline who know nothing about this employer. Oh, there's a job opening there. Yeah, let me go and see what that's all about, and then be able to pursue it and go apply for that person. We want to be the engine that points evergreen quality talent or upskilling of current talent for that healthcare employer. So let us help you. So if you go to medcerts.com, you go to the partner pages, far right on the top there, it says partners. In there are some great resources, digital resources that you can use to help inform your internal stakeholders. And why that's important is because not everybody understands talent acquisition or human resources, or those are very specific areas. And so your vice presidents or your chiefs, as we like to say, might need a little bit of context. So what we do is we provide those assets, and then if you want to, you can actually engage with us, and our partner team will meet with you and talk through: is this an absorption of our current students? Is that your need? Great. That's a zero cost to you, the employer. Is this a talent acquisition pipeline? Well, all you are doing is paying for their training as part of a job posting. You're going to get people that are interested in this. We also have a partnership with a sister organization of ours called Tallo, which allows us to tap into the K-12 and right after graduation markets, with lots of students that are coming out that are very interested in healthcare. They want to be a nurse. They're on a 2-year nursing wait list. So why not get certified as an MA now? When you're ready, you can then go, you'll be working, and then you're ready for nursing school at that point. So that's an interesting option too. And then the third one is, and Ross, you've said this a few times, I 100% agree. What is your current staff? What are their needs? What are we going to show them as an employer that we care about? Hopefully it's them. Getting them upskilled, sponsoring some training already as part of your tuition assistance policy. Why not add a catalog like this one to it that would enable them to go and seek certification as an education is benefit type of approach. And if they're a cashier today, they could be your next pharmacy technician tomorrow. So I would say connect with us. Let us know how we can help you. There's some resources there you can use, but we're also happy to engage on a much more direct level.
Love it. This has been very helpful today. I do have a follow-up question. This is just, I want to ask you, and those in the comments, I'm just curious. I've heard some things recently about work schedules, 4-10s versus 5-8s, or maybe you do like a 5 and a 4-day work week. So it's a 9-day over 2 weeks. Or if it's of course, 3-12s is very common in the nurse field. If you were just redesigning, those in the comments, and yourself, Raphael, I want you to answer first. If you were redesigning a work schedule, what do you think would be a great work schedule to offer first? Because most companies offer 5-8s, right? That's kind of the normal thing. Mm-hmm. If you were redesigning it today, which one would you go with?
That's a good one. I think I saw some research that was done by Harvard that said that a 4-10 is actually like the most productive schedule that they've done research on. Now, I am not in the healthcare field, and working 12 hours in an environment like that one feels like it would like just destroy me, right? But for those that can do it, that desire to do it, I think the balance of going and working 3 days a week and then having 4 days to kind of do life that helps you go back and do those 3 days. I mean, whatever that balance is, I'm in favor of it. I think the looking at things in a new way is really, really important for employers, not just in training, but also in like, how do we make sure that we've got schedules in place that cover 7 days a week, but don't burn people out? Because I think that's going to be something else to tackle as well. Those are my 2 cents.
I love it. I love those thoughts. Guys in the comments, what do you guys think? You think if you were redesigning it from today, this is just hypothetical here. Would you go ahead and go with the same old 5-8s we've been doing for, I don't know how long I've been alive, or you do the 4-10s, or something more like what the nurses run in their shifts, like a 3-12 situation, or maybe I've seen some companies do the 5 and 4, where you work 5 days one week and 4 days the next. I've been hearing a lot more recently about 4-10s than I ever have. I will tell you this too, Raphael, when just speaking with nurses, especially if they're working the night shift, it takes them a whole day to recover anyway. Like half that 4th day, they're kind of recovering. So it's almost like they lose that 4th day anyway. Some have just mastered it where they can do the 3-12s and they do truly have 4 days off. But I would love to hear what you guys say in the comments. Now, Benjamin says 4-10s would be best from an employee perspective. Every week you'd have 3 days to relax. Many of us already work 10 hours each day. It's true too. So productivity may drop overall. And I'll say this, even the 12-hour shifts, because I have a lot of folks who I interact with in the nursing side, they end up working sometimes instead of 12, they may work 13, maybe 14 hours those 3 days because just the way things work out. So I'm kind of with you on the 4-10s. Let us know in the comments what you guys think. If you liked what you saw today, if you like this kind of conversation we had about having folks who are kind of a different, just different takes on solutions within the healthcare industry, let us know that you like it. Give us a little bit of a hand clap. Appreciate Raphael, you coming on today and representing the MedSearch organization. Really, for me, kind of just a newer concept of a low-cost hybrid, not hybrid, but just a hyper-focused certification type, like get these folks ready quickly instead of us having to wait 2, 3, 4 years for them to be ready. I love the concept, and it's at a relatively low cost that an employer could sponsor, perhaps up front for a brand new employee or one that they feel like has the promise to grow from there. But thank you for being on the show today. It's been awesome.
Yeah, thanks so much for the time and the opportunity. Really appreciate it. Enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you, and everybody in the comments. I'd say a thumbs up and lots of great questions. It was really great. Esther says 4-10s or 9-80s. Yeah, that was, I couldn't remember the name of it, but it was the 5 and the 4. She's talked about it. Not the 9-80s. She likes that one, or the 4-10s. Aaron, he gives us a hand clap as well. We're going to go ahead and sign off. Thanks for everyone for you guys being here today. We'll be back next week. And if any of you are on Instagram, I'm actually interviewing the executive director of ASHR, which is the American Society of Healthcare HR Association, this evening on Instagram at 5:30. So feel free to join us there. But guys, have a great rest of the day. Have a productive week, and we'll see you next Monday on Growth Monday. Okay, so hang on just a moment there.